Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining this podcast. My name is Dr. Irvin Scott, and I'd like to welcome you to Office Hours with Doc. Over the past 30 years, I, like many before me and many after, have devoted my life to America's children and its communities by working within the education ecosystem. In other words, I'm an educator. I've been a teacher. I've been a principal. I've been a district leader. I've been a nonprofit director. I've been a foundation executive. But so many before me have done those jobs, and so many people are doing those jobs, and so many people will do those jobs in the future. However, what we want to do in this podcast is look at individuals and listen to those individuals who are doing those jobs right now in order to do three things. One, we want to hear their stories, understand how they got to where they are, and what they're doing while they're there on behalf of America's children. And let's go beyond America, the world's children, because we have international perspectives that we'll be sharing. So that's the first thing. Number two, we want to better understand how these educators work within the ecosystem, not only as individual actors, because sometimes you have to do that, but more importantly, as team members to have impact. And then number three, speaking of impact, our goal is to hear how we might all work to accelerate our collective effort and impact going forward. These are the voices from the ecosystem that we'll hear in this podcast. If you've ever wondered what's going on in schools or school systems or school districts or however you think about schools in the US and the world and the lives of those individuals who are shaping children's lives, if you've ever wondered that, this is the podcast for you. Office Hours with Doc. Welcome. But we're all into season two, and I am so excited. I think this is the first time I'm actually bringing someone on the podcast who is more connected to me than a lot of people in the world, because this one happens to be my son, one of my sons. I have three sons, Irvin, Leon, and Nicholas, otherwise known as Nick. But I'm going to have my sons join us for the podcast, and maybe I'll get my wife at some point in time. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this because, as I like to say in my book, Leading with Heart and Soul, we are not sort of isolated individuals. One part of ourselves is sort of disconnected from another part of ourselves. They all sort of come together in an integrated way. So we are professionals. We have with professional lives, we are individuals with personal lives, spiritual lives, and the best work that we can do probably happens at the intersection of all of those. And so I'm excited that this season two is going to kick off me bringing in some individuals who know me from more than just an educator perspective. And the first one is Nicholas, Nick Scott, our third son. Nick, welcome to Office Hours with Doc.
I
He's
appreciate it.
he's
Thank you for having
laughing.
me on. For anybody watching, I just want to clarify. I'm Nick. That's Dr. Scott. I know we look a lot alike, but I'm wearing the black, so try not to get confused.
People say that all the time. They say he looks a lot like me. And he's a good guy. And we appreciate him joining us today. He is doing some amazing work. Many of you may know, but I'll let him talk about the work that he's doing. But one of the things that I want you to do, Nicholas, is just talk a little bit about your journey academically
Mhm.
and professionally. You can say where you are now, what you do, what you've been doing, but give us that trajectory around how you got to where you are, both from an academic standpoint as well as a professional standpoint.
Yeah. So right now I'm blessed to be entering soon into my seventh year in the NFL, which is a huge blessing. somebody who's drafted in the 7th round. Usually those guys don't stick around too long. So I beat the odds by about 4 years. Thank God. I've got a beautiful wife, Holly. With her, I have 2 children, Noah and Jackson. Jackson is 2 years old, and Noah is now 3 months old. Time is really flying. But yeah, obviously there's so much that goes into, reaching the NFL, becoming a father and husband.
And let me just clarify. The NFL stands for those who might be listening internationally.
The National Football League
There you go.
here in the United States. So the highest level of football that you can play professionally. But yeah, obviously a long journey. A lot of people in my life, who helped me get to this point, whether it be coaches, friends, teachers, what have you. And, a lot of what went into me getting to this point was, I guess, for lack of a better way, for me in my journey, just kind of checking off boxes from the academic side.
Checking off boxes. Okay,
Yeah, I know.
just
I
kidding.
look. I think
What
this will be a
boxes?
good podcast because it is. I feel like a lot of people might not expect. Um, it's rare enough to get into the NFL, but you talk about a kid who was raised in a house of 2 educators and still found a way because of his love and passion to hyper focus on sports. Um, but also kind of be raised in a house where academics was the most important thing first. Even though I wasn't necessarily the best student by a long shot, I still had some understanding of what was necessary for me to be successful in the realm of school. Just because it is such a small chance that you get to this point and can just focus on football into your 30s. But that's not the case for a lot of people, and you have to fall back on your academics, what you've learned, and find a profession and go from there. But yeah, education was obviously a huge part. I know you have some questions, kind of a little bit more specific, so I won't dive into it just yet. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I
I
appreciate that.
actually can't wait. I have some stuff to share about you
Oh, wait a minute. Now,
as
wait
it
a minute.
pertains to academics.
Just
But
kidding.
might might
Um, so
might
let's
come as a surprise. Go ahead.
let's go there at some point in time. Make sure you get to share those points that you want to make about me. But let me ask you this question specifically. What was it like to be raised by 2 uh, educators? Let's just be clear. I was a teacher when Nicholas was young. Then I was a principal when Nicholas was probably in middle school. And then I was a district leader in Boston when Nicholas was in high school at Brookline High School. And all this time, his mother, Kisha, he calls her mom, but she
Better.
was a math teacher. He said he better. Yeah, you're right. He better. She was a math teacher. So give us the quick, honest perspective, not too honest.
Right.
Um, what was it like to be raised by 2 educators?
I would say that it was an advantage um for me to be raised by 2 parents who were, academic leaders. But I would say early in my schooling, elementary school, middle school, a little bit like that. I wouldn't say I didn't. I felt that much of you guys' presence, um, in terms of, like, I think a lot of people would expect that I would go to school, then come back and be tutored by my 2 teacher parents, or be questioned, or go through homework together and stuff like that. I felt like it was pretty, what I feel, a normal experience from going to school and coming back home to just having 2 loving parents who are interested in the things you're interested in, want you to go outside and have fun and play sports. You were always into sports. Mom was always extremely supportive. Um, there were some instances where if I was struggling in school or God forbid a teacher said I hadn't turned in some assignments, that's when I would start to feel that heat of two teachers in the house where um, it was an immediate response. And the things that were important to me that weren't academic were forced to be put on the back burner by you guys in order to get back on track in school. So, for example, there were times where I was playing Pop Warner football. And if I had gotten behind on some assignments, this is maybe fifth or sixth grade, there were times where mom would take me to practice and I would sit there and do the work that I hadn't done. So mom would talk to the teachers, say, can he catch up on some stuff? There were times where I would sit there and do 2 or 3 assignments in the car before I was allowed to go to practice, whether that was on time or I had missed the start of practice. And in some instances, I had sat in the car and done homework right outside of the field where practice was going on, where I missed the actual practice. I missed the whole practice because I was sitting in the car catching up from work. That might have just been once or twice, but that's when I would start to feel that, this is life with two teachers as parents, because you guys didn't really play that falling behind work. But interestingly enough, I would say you were always an academic leader, but I didn't necessarily get that same response from you from an academic standpoint. Mom was kind of the hammer in terms of academics.
I'm telling her you called her a hammer. No, go ahead.
I think part of that is because um, you kind of understood us a little bit more as young boys who just love sports, right? And you yourself love sports, and there was still an expectation for us to work hard and do our best in school. Um, but mom was that parent that had our teachers' emails and was constantly checking in and seeing how we were doing, um, which that created a little bit of a interesting dynamic in school, just knowing that your mom was a stone's throw away if you were acting up or in class or something like that. So made it a little tougher to get away with things.
Yeah.
Um, so
I
yeah, I don't
think
know if that answers your question
that
all the way.
does that does answer my question. And I
Yeah,
think I would agree with you. I think
yeah,
and I don't think we talked about that, your mother and I. I love sports. I continue to love sports. Even today, I played football. I played not at the level of you and Irvin,
right.
your oldest brother, but I love sports, and so I also loved academics.
Yeah. Well, I say that wasn't to say,
And for me,
I always felt like you and mom were on the same page. I felt like you manifested your academia and your experience in it more in the way I think you were very invested um, in our effort when it came to academics. Like, are we actually putting in the work, or are we just missing assignments, not doing things? Like, it's one thing you come home with a C and, we've been studying and we've been doing relatively well in the class and things. And it was a totally different response from you from parent teacher night if you say, okay, he's got a C in the class, but he's missing 13 homework assignments. Like that's a little bit different. But I think as long as we kind of stayed out of that world, we didn't really receive too much hot water from you in terms of academics.
thank you very much. No, I think that's a good answer. And I think that's honest answer. And there was a time when your mother was actually substitute teaching at the high school where you were in
Mm-hmm.
high school, and so you would see her at the same time. One of the things that I didn't put this in the questions that I sent to you ahead of time, but you can handle it. One of the things that happened to you, Nicholas, was you moved high schools from Massachusetts to Virginia, uh, and going into 11th grade. And I think there are a lot of people out there who who make changes, professional changes, and their kids have to move. Sometimes at the high school level, not too often. How did that impact you? What would you say when you look back on that experience? Good, tough, difficult?
I would say it was definitely it was tough, and when I look back, I start to realize like that was a little bit of a tough move. I don't think I necessarily felt it in high school just because at that point we had moved so much. I had moved schools so much and locations at least two other times before that where it just kind of felt like it's something that we do. Like there wasn't a huge shock. I remember being a little bit disappointed moving high schools because I felt like I had been in Brookline since fifth grade, stayed in one middle school, 3 years, the longest I had been in a school to that point, and then got to high school. So the expectation was that I was just going to go, um, right through Brookline High. But one thing that helped me get through that, obviously, besides the social side, right? When you have a big move and you're on a team
Mm.
immediately, a football team or basketball team, what have you, you're thrusted into a community off the rip. So that kind of helps you from a social standpoint. Yeah. Well, it was definitely an adjustment, to say the least.
But the team aspect.
It was definitely a big move. But you know, I just okay. Here's what it was. I was excited a little bit for the move because at that point I was so into football, and it was very evident that my goal was to play Division I football and one day reach the NFL.
Mm.
For those of you who don't know high school football or those dynamics or anything, there's 50 states obviously in this country, and each state has different levels of competition in terms of um, how competitive high school football is. And so Massachusetts, comparatively in the country, is not as competitive um, as a state like Virginia, which is a southern state. So there's better competition in Virginia. And so I was excited to move to Virginia because even at that point, I understood that if I had success in Virginia, I was going to be taken more seriously. I was going to be taken more serious by um, colleges who were looking at my tape and assessing my talent level if I was doing the same things in Virginia that I was doing in Brookline, which thank God was the case, and I was able to rack up some more scholarship offers. I think probably probably a little bit more than if I had stayed in Massachusetts, just because it wasn't as great competition. But I mean, as you guys can see by my answers, it gets back to kind of checking those boxes off. I was so hyper focused on my love for football growing up that um, it being in a house with two educators, I knew what was expected of me academically, and I knew what would be accepted. And so academics manifested itself for me as me doing what I need to do necessary for my nucleus to allow me to put as much into football as I want to. So if that means I have to come home with a C plus because I started off slow in the beginning of the semester, I was going to grind to get that C plus. If that meant that I'm doing pretty well in a class and my parents are expecting me to finish right there or above, I'm going to do everything to kind of stay right there or get a higher grade. Or in some cases, if I'm not doing well at all, I was going to have to just put the sports down for a second and just grind to kind of get that grade back up. So that's kind of how it manifested itself for me. I wasn't walking into every class like, hey, I'm going to get an A in this class, but more so, let me stay as tapped in as I can to make sure that my, I guess, lack of interest comparatively to football doesn't hinder me from doing everything I want to do football wise.
I really appreciate your honesty. We've had this conversation before, and I think in some ways it was a revelation to us. We always knew that you, your brothers, you love sports. Um, you were also very talented academically. You were talented in other ways, but we knew sports was a major motivation of yours, of you guys, and we saw it as a way of leveraging the sports to ensure that you were doing what was necessary to be academically focused also. And let me ask you this question, watching the time. What would you say to parents out there who whose kids are very devoted to a particular sport and talk about one day playing pro uh, in something like when they're in middle school and when they're, or even earlier in high school, and the parents are encouraging that. Do you have any thoughts or advice? I mean, you're a professional player at the highest level.
Um, I think, whether you're a parent that's, behind them and, you are, um, that dream of theirs is just as important for you as it is for them. That's definitely the case sometimes. Some dads and moms really want their sons to reach that level for whatever reason. And then there's some parents who are a little bit more cautious and definitely more focused on academics. I think like you and mom were. I would just say just be um, mindful of the, I guess, the language or your approach behind how you support them in either direction, right? I think there's a huge difference and a huge impact for how parents talk to their kids about their aspirations as it pertains to academics, especially when their kids want to go pro in a sport. It's one thing to tell your child like, hey, um, you should really focus on academics because, only about 2% of people out of high school, like, that can be a little bit demoralizing, right? You could communicate the same thing by saying like, hey, it's really tough to make it to that level, right? But if you do want to get to that level, you got to get into a good school. You got to have good grades. So
Mm-hmm.
if you want to be a Division 1 athlete, well, you have to have Division 1 academics
Mm-hmm.
also, right? Because you might want to play at a school like, I don't know, UVA or someone. UVA is not coming to offer you if you can't pass their SAT scores or don't have a good enough GPA,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. So you can still communicate to them the importance of academics without tearing down their confidence or aspirations of reaching it to the highest level of their profession.
That's good. That's good. I really appreciate that, and I'm sure other parents appreciate that. Let's jump to college real quick. Oh, incidentally, when Nicholas was talking about moving around, we did move around quite a bit. Nicholas and his brothers, they've been in public schools, they've been in private schools, they've been in faith-based schools. And I tell people all the time that we made those decisions, his mother and I, for them because we had the means to do that. This is one of the reasons why I'm a fan of choices and options of schools uh, for families. I'm a big fan of choices. And for those of us who have resources, we do have choices for where we can put our kids. And I just think we should give more choices to more kids. And many of those choices should be public school choices. So I'm not talking about taking them and putting them in private schools. But that's why he moved around quite a bit. And then, of course, we moved from Lancaster to Massachusetts when I was working on my degree at Harvard. Let's jump to college. I had a question in there about Nick. You've had a lot of different coaches. And one of the things that I think we don't think enough about is the power of coaching and what coaches do from an education standpoint. Um, just talk a little bit about some of the, you don't have to, you can give names, but what are some of the qualities that you looked for, you really appreciated in really good coaches? And I bet some of those qualities are also similar to the qualities that we look for in really good teachers and good educators.
Yeah. So I would say with my experience with coaches and
And you can give names if you want. You don't have to.
yeah, I would say the first thing I look for a good coach or recognize in a good coach is, um, you know, the coach's dedication to understanding fully what they're teaching you, as opposed to a coach who regurgitates what he's been taught.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There are a lot of coaches at every level who, they start out as a graduate assistant and they're taught by somebody, um, and they give them all the answers and things like that. And they finally become a position coach or a coordinator or whatever. And they just kind of just going off a Rolodex of answers.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how you run this defense. This is your responsibility, your responsibility, your responsibility. The best coaches I've been around can do that and tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
This is your responsibility because me as a safety, I'm a safety. You got to drop into the middle of the field, but stay inside the left hash because you have a corner who's covering over here and a linebacker covering away from you. So you'd rather lean towards a linebacker because a corner he covers for a living. A linebacker, we want him in the run, but now we got him in the pass game. So you got to lean stuff like that. That's like that makes now I'm not going to forget that on the field. But if the coach says, "Hey, you got to lean to this left hash," okay. Now we're going to the field. I drop to the middle of the field, and I might lean to the left or the right. I don't know why I have to lean to the left, so nothing is going to tell me innately to work that way. Um, but I want to give a shout out to Tim Banks, who's now the defensive coordinator with uh, Tennessee, because he's probably the first coach who really took the time to explain the why behind pretty much everything he was teaching us uh, at the safety position. He's one of the best football minds, brightest football minds that I've come across with, but also one of the best teachers at the same time. So, shout out to him because I feel like at that point, I was an athlete who could regurgitate a lot of responsibility and assignment and things like that. But Tim Banks taught me how to recognize the why, which only makes your job a little bit easier when you know
Mm-hmm.
why you're doing it.
I love that. I think that definitely transfers to teachers. Um, Students often ask the question, why do we need to know this?
Yeah,
And and sometimes teachers don't have the best answer to that. And I think that is a really important and it's really important to have a good answer to why they need to know that. And we can do a better job in education to answer that question. Um, I'm looking at our time. You are a parent now. You have two of our grandchildren, Jackson and Noah. And if Jackson is listening, uh, I won't say one of our code words.
I was gonna say, if you do that, man, this
I
is a
won't do
real
that.
raw version
I
of
that's just between Jackson and the
Dr.
family.
Scott.
But anyway, how does that change your perspective around? I mean, you were talking about us sort of raising you and being your guide around education and athletics and academics, and I'd add in there spirituality. Um, how does that change your perspective around things now that you were on the other end of that? And of course, Jackson is 2 and Noah's 3 months, but you're
Yeah.
moving in that direction there, son.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I've been thinking about that a lot lately, right? Because I feel like I'm gonna blink and Jackson's gonna be in elementary school. So um, I thank God that I married Holly because Holly has always been a 4.0 student, and uh, she was what above 4.0 in high school, and then we met at Penn State, and she was a 3.95 student
Wow.
at Penn State. So always, always, always in the books, always studying, working extremely hard, trying to do her best. Um, even though sometimes we'd be in study hall together and I do my best to distract her
And
and just
that's a
hang out
shame.
with me. But
That's a shame.
she powered through and and here we are.
I'm
But
glad she didn't do any of your homework though,
she didn't
because
do any of my homework, although I will say I did try.
that's a shame.
I
You're
one time I
grounded.
tried to get her to type a paper for me, and she refused. But I got her to type the paper while I told her what to say, word for word.
Oh,
That was
she's
her
so
great.
sweet.
She's yeah, very
That's sweet of her.
very sweet, very sweet. She's never done any of my homework, never done a paper for me, unfortunately. But yeah, I to answer your question, um, I think the main approach I want to have is, I was always, this has changed a little bit, but I was always a kid who I would always try to argue that um, school was not as important as you thought it was, right?
This is the
And
way you used to be.
for the most part, yeah. I no, I'm just kidding.
We still
I
got
have a
work to
little
do.
I have a little bit of what my approach worked for me with my goals and aspirations, and obviously just trusting God and my work ethic and things like that. School was never on the forefront for me. It just wasn't. My passion was always football. My love was always football. That always came above academics for me, right, wrong, or indifferent. Um, but what I did find through academics is when I found something that interested me, I didn't have to work to gain knowledge, right? I didn't have to work to learn more. It was something I wanted to do. So,
Mm,
for example, you showed me the book Blink by Malcolm Gladwell,
yes.
11th grade, and that absolutely ignited my fire and interest for psychology,
Mm,
right? I was an average student in high school, um, at best. You introduced me to that book. I read it. I loved it. I took AP psychology my senior year, got an A in the class, got a 5 on the psychology exam, and became a psych major in college and loved it,
mm,
right? And I say that that's so huge about academics is I don't necessarily, and this is more your world and you could figure it out. I'm not somebody that really believes that the US school system is necessarily tailored to every child, right?
mm,
Because I wasn't a kid who had behavioral issues or anything like that, but for some reason, school just wasn't something that sparked interest in me until I found a specific topic.
mm,
Um, and so I think as a parent now, looking back, I obviously want to kind of ingrain the same principles that you guys ingrained in me, and that there is a requirement and importance of, completing assignments, studying when you're supposed to. Those are very important skills.
mhm.
But I would encourage Jackson and Noah to look outside of just the topics that they're receiving in school, math, science, physics, what have you, history, whatever. Look outside of those boxes and find something that interests you,
Mm,
right? Because when you get to college, it's not going to just be your basic math, science, English. And there's so many things you can do. There's so many um, avenues of learning that you can find and latch onto that can spark a fire in you and change the trajectory of what you see yourself doing for the rest of your life, right?
mm,
And for me, that was psychology. If I didn't play in the NFL, I was going to try to be a psychologist um, at some capacity, or be in the psychological world. So I would just, yeah, that would be my answer. I would definitely push them to not only try to do well in school, but see what you're interested in outside of what you're attending for class. day in and day out. For me, that was psychology.
That's powerful. That's a good answer, Nick. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your honesty. It's too late for me to punish you for anything back in those days, so you just let it all hang out. And I think
I appreciate it.
that's
I
good.
didn't mean to come at you with the
No,
school system comment, but I
no.
just
The schools. Wait. The school system comment is spot on. I agree with you. I think
yeah.
unfortunately, we have not figured out how to tailor learning experiences to individual students. We often do things in schools as if kids are monolithic; they're all the same, and that's why to this point around options. That's why I'm a fan of options. I think
Mm,
the more options you have, the more likely you are to find something that actually fits your personality, your kid's personality, and I think that's really important. Now, what gets tricky is how you fund those options. That's where the politics gets into play. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes. Couple real quick questions. I know people are wondering about on a more professional level, one of your highest. What's one of your highest moments so far in your football career? Like this has been a pinnacle of my career. Anything.
um, I would say aside from getting drafted, even though it was the seventh round, getting drafted in the 2020 or 2018 NFL draft was one of the
2019, wasn't it?
2019 NFL draft. Yeah, after the 2018 season.
Right.
A year earlier, with little fanfare, the Rams used their 243rd selection in the 2019 NFL Draft to select Penn State defensive back Nick Scott.
Yeah, I know you play special team, but we're looking for you playing safety too now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, sir.
I
Absolutely.
mean, our special team, you're great at that, but I think you could be a chance to be a great safety too.
That was momentarily just a huge kind of weight lifted off my shoulder, and my biggest moments of my career are the moments that allow me to reflect on everything that's happened up to that point, good and bad, and how because God orders your steps a certain way, it doesn't matter whether it was good or bad. He brought you to this point, and you needed every single thing to happen in order to make it to this point. So getting drafted, and then after that, the same type of reflection was when we won the Super Bowl in 2021 with the LA Rams. And I came into that season as the fifth safety on the depth chart, had a great camp, moved up to the third safety on the depth chart, had my first two career interceptions, started my first career game in the NFL, I think like week 15. Then the last game of the season, both starters get injured. And I was able to start every game in the playoffs and win a Super Bowl as a starter, which is a role that was pretty new for me. I think, in my 19 years of playing football, at that point, my 7 with college and NFL, I had only started 1 year. And that was my senior year of college. Up until that point, the first 3 years in the NFL, I never started a game. I was only a starter for 1 year of my life. And it was a huge sense of validation for me as somebody who always had, leadership roles on the team and things like that. But one thing that really made me, it sounds silly, right? Because I'm in the NFL, but like you still look for these forms of validation as an athlete, for better or for worse. And I had never felt truly validated as an athlete in the NFL because I wasn't a starter. I had different roles. I still got playing time on defense or anything like that, but I was never a starter. And so the fact that I just was able to be a starter have a positive impact. I was one of the highest graded defensive players throughout the entire playoffs. And so that was just a huge blessing. That was one of, if not the most meaningful, really 4 weeks in my career as an athlete, not just because of the ring, but just everything that was encompassed with it. I would have been happy with a Super Bowl ring, whether I was on the field or not, just being a part of that team. But being able to have impact, having a positive impact on the team and feel like a legitimate part of that team's success in those 5 games.
No, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And you didn't even bring up Tom Brady.
Intercepted at the 30. It's Nick Scott.
So I got to pick off Tom Brady, and everybody sees the pick. What not everybody sees is the stoppage of play before that. Eric Weddle saying I can play with outside leverage because I got him on the backside.
I told Nick, alert a check we have, and he's going to do a 7-round. Like, I know it, I see it. Just make sure you're outside leverage. He's going to run right to you. And he's like, okay.
So all those things kind of came into fruition, and it was a big play.
And we talked about it. We did. And we just talked about it. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I would just intercepting Tom Brady. Last question for you. First of all, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it. My goal is to have your brothers on too, and they'll give sort of another dimension. Okay, right now you seem to be really passionate. You continue to play football, and great father, husband, man of faith. Can you say just maybe 30 seconds on what's going on with golf in your life and where did that come from?
Yeah, so my love for golf was sparked by a number of things. First off, you introduced me to the game of golf.
Moi?
Around high school. And it's really beautiful because it's been like a passing of the baton, because there was a point where, I was just learning and you were the master, right, in my world. But now we've had
Wait a minute. What baton is being passed?
What's the word I'm looking for? Just things have flipped, and now I feel as though I have the mastery, and there's so many things that I can teach you. And what I really appreciate about you is your willingness to learn from me. And
this is true.
We have a lot of fun. But I love the game of golf. Just got off the golf course before this podcast. Didn't play great, but it's just something to have outside of football that still requires you to learn and work at. And it can also just be played very casually and a lot of fun. But we have great competitions. You and I were always out there competing, which is very much our nature. And we won't say who usually comes away.
Well, no, what we will say is that no, you're right. We won't say that, but it's a lot of fun. And
it is fun.
And I think you have really grown in a relatively short period of time. And I just continue to be proud of you and just know that one day you will get at my level when it comes to golf. And I just want to continue to encourage you. That's definitely something.
The advantage of this being your podcast is you get the last word. So we'll just leave it at that.
Got that right.
I won't keep going back and forth with you, but I might start my own podcast just so we can just have our own little banter, and I can get the last word.
I love that idea. Nick, as Mom and I say, Nicholas, it's been a joy having you. Thank you. We're proud of you. Keep up the great work, and on so many different levels. And thank you for joining Office Hours with Doc. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and look for the next episode of Office Hours with Doc.